Attendees trickling in. Perfect. Well, hello, good afternoon, everyone that's joining us on, whether you're joining on Zoom or whether you're joining on the On Purpose or Escape the City social channels. Thanks so much for tuning into this lunchtime webinar with On Purpose and Escape the City. This is part of our ongoing partnership promoting the On Purpose Associate Program, which is a great way to launch your kind of impact career. Joined today by Josie from the On Purpose team, who is going to host this On Purpose webinar, talking through how you can get into the associate program and all the benefits of this amazing year-long retraining program. The deadline for applications for On Purpose, which you can find in your chat box or on the social channels that you're looking at, is the 30th of October. However, there's an early incentive to get your application in by the 30th of September at midnight. That will give you exclusive access to a live training session with Tom Rippin, who is the founder and CEO of On Purpose. So that is a great little hook to launch this webinar on. Josie, I'm going to hand over to you to take it from here, and I hope everyone gets a lot out of this session. Ask loads of questions. We're keen to keep it really interactive, so hopefully it's useful to you, and get your applications in. Josie, I'll leave it with you.
Hi, thanks so much, Jake. We're really excited to be here as well. So yeah, thank you everyone for coming. As Jake said, so my name's Josie. I'm from the London On Purpose core team. I'm the marketing and recruitment coordinator. We've also got Sarah from the core team in the background joining us today. If you've got any questions, feel free to ask them on the chat. And we're also going to save some for the end. So if you've got any for Emma, then yeah, we'll go and ask them towards the end of it. And yeah, so today we've got Emma Johnson-Dunn here. She was an April 21 fellow. And Emma, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for having me. I hope this is useful. I guess a little bit about my background. So the thing I was doing right before On Purpose was advertising. But I suppose my route there, so I did geography at university, always had quite a strong sense that I wanted to do something with purpose. I come from quite a sort of do-gooding family, but ended up actually being slightly the black sheep of the family when I went into advertising. But yeah, graduated, worked in the charity sector for a little bit, wasn't really getting anywhere with it. And I kind of have friends all around me who seem to be doing all these amazing, sexy things with grad schemes, and kind of thought, oh, maybe I need to train to do a thing. And I've had a friend who was working in advertising who seems to be having a great time. And I'd like to tell you it was more thought out than that, but it wasn't. Managed to kind of get myself a job at an ad agency, and I was there for the best part of a decade with 2 maternity leaves, and got quite senior. And to begin with, it was great. It's quite a glamorous, kind of fun, creative career. But I think reflecting on it, I had sort of quite consciously gone away from what I knew my values to be. And there were good reasons for that at the time. But actually that, did slightly come back to bite me. And I always felt slightly out of place. I was doing well at it. But yeah, it kind of got to a point where I realized that I didn't want to be my bosses. I was really quite unhappy in what I was doing. It felt so out of step with what was important to me. And I had a bit of a breakdown, if I'm completely honest. And when I went back in between my 2 kids, it was just very apparent that I was in completely the wrong place. And that was the point at which I applied for On Purpose.
Thanks, Emma. So yeah, that was a little bit of background on Emma before the programme. What we're going to do today, I've got a few questions for Emma that we're going to have a little conversation about why she came to On Purpose, like how she found the programme and what she's up to now. And then, like I said, if you've got any questions for her towards the end, feel free to send them our way. We'll have about 5 or 10 minutes at the end to answer any of those. So you've told us a little bit about your background on purpose, and you kind of said a little bit how that, you know, made you feel. So could you, would you be able to take us into what kind of led you to On Purpose, and what, you know, what was it that like made you want to make that change?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, well, On Purpose had actually always been on my radar. I actually first saw, probably on LinkedIn, something about it when I was kind of first applying for jobs straight out of university. But I think you need to have a minimum of a couple of years experience, which I didn't have at that point. 3, thanks, Sophie. Yeah. So it's sort of, you know, if I'd like to think that this is all a very joined up story. It's definitely not as joined up as it might sound. I kind of did have the intention that one day I would come back into the purpose sector once I'd sort of developed a skill set in something, and communications kind of ended up being it. So I sort of always had it at the back of my mind that I might do it one day, but it definitely gained a lot more traction in that decade. It was everywhere, you know, and I knew 1 or 2 people that did it, that loved it, and went on to do really interesting things. And so, but it, you know, I think taking the plunge felt a lot scarier than it actually should have been and was. And I, you know, I wish I'd done it sooner, to be honest. But yeah, it was just, I think, just coming to that point of just going, why do I keep on doing this? Like, what exactly am I working towards? So I've got to make a change. And this seemed like a brilliant way to do it.
I think a lot of people here, probably with us today as well, maybe have that feeling every now and then. Especially it can be really daunting going into something that is complete unknown. I guess for you, you already had a little bit of knowledge in the sector, from your uni experience. But I think getting back into it is not always the easiest, or it may not seem like the easiest step. But now that you've taken that plunge, would you be able to kind of give our audience a little bit of idea of why it is that having a career that you care about is so important?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I think it kind of sounds really cringy, but I think it does come back to what you value. And you know, you'll all be here on this webinar because there is a part of you that feels like something is not right. And that will probably come back to what your values are, and your work feeling out of step with that. And I think listen to that, don't ignore that. You know, sometimes work is a means to pay the bills, or, you know, you might not be that bothered about work being purposeful or necessarily being something you care about. And that is absolutely fine, you know. And I think it's actually really important not to get too starry-eyed about, you know, there's a brilliant book called Work Won't Love You Back, which you definitely read. You know, I think it is important to be realistic, but at the end of the day, you know, you don't need me to tell you that if you're doing something you care about that fits with your values, you will want to get up for it in the morning, you will do better at it, you will progress faster, you will just be generally happier. And I feel like I'm spouting cliches here, but it is the happiest I've ever been since I made this change. And yeah, I think just go for it. It's only a year.
I love that. It's great to hear how much difference it's made in like your personal like well-being as well, not just the day-to-day, you know, 9-to-5 grind. And yeah, what is it about On Purpose specifically? So you said you think it was on LinkedIn that you might have seen it originally. What specifically about the program drew you to it? Why did you want to plunge through On Purpose?
Yeah, so there were a couple of others. I actually went to a talk with On Purpose, and there are a couple of others, I probably shouldn't mention their names, but ones that were sort of more focused around, you know, if you wanted to become an entrepreneur in the space, for example. On Purpose, and Josie, you're probably going to kick me for saying this, I think is really good for people that have got a general sense they want to do something better with their career but don't really know what. So you know, I kind of thought, oh God, I'm not, you know, there are people that are really into women's rights or the climate, or they have a thing. And actually I remember probably at that talk somebody saying, actually we almost prefer you not to be too focused in what you want to do, because the great thing about On Purpose is it will give you lots of different kinds of experiences. And I thought that sounded really exactly what I was looking for. It's almost like going back to those good old early days where you could do a few internships or work experience and kind of try on a few hats and figure out what works. So I think the fact that you get to do 2 different workplace placements, and then all the brilliant things that go around it, the training program, the mentoring, the coaching, and just the cohort. I mean, doing it with 20 other people who are in the same sort of headspace as you really will make friends for life. And yeah, 20 new mates in the middle of COVID, that was great when no one was seeing anybody.
No, I can fully understand that. I mean, the network or the on purpose community is just something, I don't know if I've seen one like it really. Everyone's just so close knit, and I think spending such an intense year together, everyone just seems to come out of it with not just a community that's going to help you, maybe get a job and help you, support you, even just with like going through that process, but like you said, you have lifelong friends that come out of it as well. I guess you've all got sharing the same morals, so
absolutely.
I guess you'd expect that. And so you said back about the placements that you got to experience in a bit with the different sectors. What would you like to talk a little bit about your placements that you were in the year?
Sure, yeah, and there's such a breadth of placements, and it does vary year by year as well. So I think there's really something in there for everybody. And also it's actually really good to do something completely the polar opposite to what you expect. So one of the ones I ended up doing was NatWest, their sustainable banking team. Now, I probably would have put banking at the polar opposite end of like what I'm into, good at. But it was a real eye-opener. What I was doing was piloting a new program to help parents learn to talk to their kids about money. So kind of being a recent mum, that was something that I was quite interested in. But just, seeing how such a mega institution is trying to become more purposeful and put purpose at the heart of its strategy was really fascinating. It was a brilliant team, really passionate people, and made some amazing contacts there who I've stayed in touch with, and they've supported me with other things I've done subsequently. So yeah, definitely don't be afraid of, ending up doing something that you might not think you want to do. There is probably more learning in that than in the easier option or the one that's closest to your experience. And then the second one was Samaritans, where I've ended up staying. So that obviously worked out well. And that was Samaritans Innovation Team, which is a wonderful team that we sort of sit slightly on the outskirts of Samaritans, trying to come up with new breakthrough ways of doing things, whether that's, and it's all to do with kind of how we're going to reach new audiences, new supporter audiences. So I've been working with them to launch a new student mental health product, which again is something that was quite close to my heart. So yeah, totally different, banking, charity, but really a lot of different kinds of learning in both.
Yeah, amazing. And I think I'm sure it's the same with your cohort. From a lot of associates that we talk to, some of them it ends up being the placement that they actually maybe, I mean, so you get to choose, there's some choice in which placements you get to work with. But sometimes when people don't get the one that they thought they wanted the most, that one ends up being the one that they like the most in the end. Yeah. So I think a lot of people end up surprised with what it is that they actually do like from it. Yeah. And I guess through that, so you were lucky to get offered a place with Samaritans after, or not lucky, but perhaps raising that.
I wrangled hard.
Yeah, and quite a lot of our associates do actually end up with a placement, offering a place after the placement. But it'd be great to know how you felt On Purpose helped you with your career, and what sort of support you felt that you got from On Purpose, and the cohort, the core team, all the aspects of it that kind of were there to support you through the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think first thing to say on the sort of getting a job front, because I know that's obviously going to be a big concern to anyone thinking about making a break. The I know it's easy for me to say on the other side of it, but it's not as big a deal as you might think it is. I think half the battle sometimes is just making the break with what you're already doing, and you do get so much support to find your next thing. A lot of people stayed with their placements, found new things. There were people that left and didn't have something, but they were probably more relaxed about that than they ever would have been at any other time in their lives, because they had just proved to themselves that they could be helicoptered in anywhere and smash it for 6 months. And you know, some of them ended up kind of setting up on their own and just doing things they never would have even imagined doing before, because of that confidence boost that the year had given them. But yeah, I mean, so much support. So you know, you get a lot of training sessions around. I mean, I suppose, well, how has it supported me with my career change, and then how it supports me with finding a job? You get loads of support to find your next job, so sort of don't worry too much about that. But I think in a broader sense, confidence is a huge one. The network is amazing. I think not just your cohort, who are all, you know, going to be brilliantly connected from the years they've just had, but the On Purpose Slack channel is the best job board in the whole world. So, you know, and the network that you get, the core team is so well connected. You know, they see so many people go through this program. So if you call them up and say, I'm kind of vaguely thinking I might want to do this, they'll know like 10 people that you can speak to. And yeah, I think just, you know, having that experience on your CV, because it can be quite hard to just make a complete clean break with what you were doing before. And there's no doubt that having some really solid kind of high level experience to persuade people in this new sector you're trying to break into that you can do it helps enormously. So it's a combination of lots of things. Yeah. And just friends. It's just such good kind of friends that will be with you and support you with this way beyond your On Purpose year.
Absolutely. Thanks, Emma. So I think we've got time for maybe 2 more questions, and then we'll get on to, I can see some questions are coming in from our viewers. So we would just like to ask you, what are your 3 key pieces of advice that you'd give to someone thinking of making this change?
Sure. I did actually think about this. So the first one, I've kind of already said it, but it is only a year. And I know, again, it's easy for someone on the other side of it to say that, but a year will go by so fast in the grand scheme of your life. It's a complete disaster. You can always go back, although you won't want to. But it is not as big a deal as you think it is. Just do it. Don't build it up to be too much of a big thing. Don't think, you know, I've got to do X for a number of years before I do it. Just do it. It doesn't matter who you are, your personal circumstances. I know obviously the salary isn't brilliant, but although you do get paid, which is, you know, a lot of these other programs don't pay you, which is huge. That is tough. There's no denying that. But On Purpose is really keen to kind of find ways to support people from whatever background to do this program. And I mean, I had a 9-month-old baby and a 2-year-old going into this, and was thinking I was going to be you know, with a bunch of 25-year-olds who were all like footloose and fancy free, and that wasn't the case at all. There were people from all walks of life. So yeah, talk to us if you're thinking about doing it. Call up On Purpose, and they will put you in touch with a fellow who has got similar experience to you, who you can chat it through with. And there's hundreds of us, and we're all really, really happy to do that. And then I think the final thing I'd say is just, you do really need to be able to demonstrate passion for the impact sector. So I've done interviews for On Purpose, and there've been people that have just been outstanding, but I've not been that convinced that it's the impact sector they want to change their career into. They just sort of want to change. So I think it's really important to be able to demonstrate that passion in whatever way you can.
I think that's really 3 brilliant bits of advice there. Thank you. And then our last question is sort of building on from that last one. Do you have any tips for people thinking about applying to the programme? You know, maybe part of the applications or the interviews, obviously without giving away too many of our secrets.
Sure. The Tom Rippon thing's great. That wasn't on offer when I did it, but yeah, definitely get your applications in early and get a chance to chat with him. He's obviously the kind of the godfather of On Purpose, and he's amazing. So I think the demonstrate passion one I've kind of already said. I think that is really important. And so if you think you've got nothing that you can use to demonstrate that, you might want to give yourself a bit of time to maybe attend some things or speak to some people or whatever that will help you to demonstrate that. Practice the case study. It's quite hard, there's no denying it. I am the least numerate person in the world, and I'm not exaggerating. I struggle with basic adding. Don't be put off by that. Yes, there'll be people who are ex-consultants who do this stuff every day and they'll absolutely smash it, but On Purpose don't want a cohort of 20 management consultants. They want varied people, so they will be prepared to accept people that are a bit rubbish in the case study. But even so, practice it under time conditions in front of somebody, because you'd be amazed how when you're sat in front of someone, like, the ability to add just goes out of your head. Yeah, I think, and again, just try and talk to as many people as you can. Call us up, do your research. It'll just help you feel kind of much more confident going into that process. But it's not, I'm making it sound really scary. It's like, it is tough, but it's fine. It's manageable. You can absolutely do it.
Thanks. I totally agree. I think the case study, so basically just to give a bit of context for anyone who hasn't had a look to see the structure of our interviews, you get given a case study to do throughout it, and we will give you a practice one to do ahead of that if you're offered the interview. And like Emma said, practice is, really will really help you out on the day. So thank you for answering all those questions. We've just about got a bit more time to answer some of our audience's questions. So we've got one that's come through. So by joining On Purpose, were you worried about taking a step down in your career, going from direct to potentially something of less seniority or complexity? And do you think the placements and the career outlooks after the programme offer complexity and seniority?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It was a concern, but actually I think while you're on the On Purpose year, particularly if you get put in somewhere that's outside your comfort zone, you will not be lacking in complexity and challenge by any means. So there was never a point at which I felt like I wasn't being challenged. And actually, in terms of taking a step down, there's no denying that sometimes if you want to kind of completely start afresh in something, you do need to take a little bit of a step down. But I think across my cohort, people have actually been pleasantly surprised that they haven't a career a salary cut is not always a given. In some people's cases, they actually got a salary increase, and no one went in at absolute entry level. Yeah, it might be a slight step down. But on the whole, you're coming to this with a decent amount of experience behind you, and yeah, I think certainly opportunities to do interesting, varied, complex roles, there's tons of them. There's absolutely tons of them, and that's only increasing with everything that the world is about to face. The sector needs good, talented people, and On Purpose name carries a lot of weight, so you are going to be going in at a decent level.
Thanks, Emma. Another one that's come in is, so what challenges do you anticipate for the impact sector in the current climate? There's a bit of a sense of impending doom, isn't there, which I'm trying not to give into. It's a good question. It's a question I feel like I should be better read up on. But I think across the board, certainly need in terms of kind of needs from the public. There's going to be much more of that. Budgets are going to get squeezed. But I think the sectors has proved time and time again its ability to be creative and to pivot and to innovate in those kinds of situations. Look at COVID, look at all the amazing new kind of social enterprises that popped up, look at the
incredible things that businesses and charities did. To I think purpose is probably more important now than ever before. Huge corporates cannot do business without showing what they're doing on ESG. So our time is now, definitely. Yes, it will be challenging. It's going to be challenging for everyone. But I almost think, if you're not factoring in some element of purpose to your career, then you're going to struggle in the next few years. So it's times are going to be tough, but there's absolutely hope and opportunity for good, committed people in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. So another question, this has come back to the case studies. So how do you prepare for the case studies? Is that by Googling consulting case study interviews?
Yeah, there's definitely a bit of that. So On Purpose do actually send you some examples. I can't remember where, is it BSG or something like that you guys sent? I can't remember, but they send some really good quality practice examples. Googling, there are loads of resources you can find online. I went back and did some basic GCSE maths, like percentage changes. I've not done a percentage change in a good long while. It's also a good opportunity to just rake through your network and see if you know anybody that might work in that world, and see if they're prepared to just grill you for an hour. But you do get given a couple of case studies to try out. So yeah, I'd say it's brushing up on your maths, it's trying to find some examples, and then just trying to make yourself do it under kind of pressured conditions.
Great. I think I don't know if we have maybe just time for one more quick answer before we close off here. So what was one of the things that you were worried about before making your change that you're now happy about?
Something I was worried about before. Yeah, I think going back to whoever asked the question about, there is definitely a sort of, and I don't know why you should think this going into the impact sector, but I was a bit like, will be a bit of a loss of status. What will people think of me? Especially from the sector that I was in, having got to a relatively senior level and working in quite a sort of, from the outside, seemingly, I suppose, sort of glamorous world. There's a sense of, you pin a lot of your self-worth and your sense of identity to that. And actually, a lot of the work I did with my On Purpose coach was around sort of unpinning my sense of identity from my work, because that should not be what defines me. And actually, I feel so much more free for that. And I don't, I suppose, firstly, I realized that was a bit silly, the whole kind of worrying about status thing. But also that I'm now doing something that I am so much more excited to tell people that I'm doing. And I speak with so much more passion now, and I am so much prouder of what I am now doing.
Brilliant. All right, well, I think that's all we have time for. I can see we're almost coming to the 1 o'clock mark. Thank you so much, Emma, for joining us today, and to Escape the City for hosting us. It's been really great chatting to you. And as Jake said at the start of the chat, that the deadline for the associate program is the 30th of October. But if you can apply before our early deadline of midnight on this Friday, you can gain access to an exclusive live training session with our founder and CEO, Tom Rippon. And if you have any other questions, feel free to message us on any of our social channels, or you can email them to recruitment@onpurpose.org. As Emma said, all our fellows in the core team are really happy to speak to you individually if you've got any questions. If you can find any of our fellows on our website that you find their story really interesting, or you've just got any questions for them specifically, everyone's usually very happy to have a little chat with you. We can arrange a coffee, virtual coffee or coffee meet up with you to answer any questions. So yeah, thanks again for everyone for coming and joining us today as well. Yeah, it's been great.
Thanks for having me. Good luck, everyone.